Welcome to today's Audit Committee meeting. This is not a public meeting, but a meeting the public can attend. I am Councillor Jane Cox, Vice Chair of the Audit Committee. Before we commence, I would like to outline the domestic arrangements for the meeting. We are not expecting a fire practice today. If the alarm sounds, please leave the chamber, turn right and proceed down the stairway and through the emergency exit on the ground floor. The assembly point is in the public space in front of Cast beyond the fountain. Anyone with mobility issues should wait in the refuge area near the lift and use the intercom to call for assistance. This meeting will be recorded and published on the Council's website. By entering the Council chamber, you are accepting that you will be recorded and your images will be retained and broadcast by the Council. If anyone intends to record today's meeting, please ensure this does not disturb the conduct of the meeting. Please ensure that your mobile phones are switched to silent mode. Thank you. Prior to commencing the formal business on today's agenda, I would like the committee to pay their respects to former councillor Charlie Hogarth, who sadly died recently. Charlie Hogarth served as a councillor in the Bentley ward for a period of 14 years, from May 2011 until May 25. He also served as a councillor on the Audit Committee. Thank you. Right, item 1, apologies for absence. We've received apologies from Dr. Stuart Green. Are there any other apologies? No. I understand Georgia Jones is running late, so she'll hopefully be here for her item. Item 2, exclusions of the public and press. Agenda item 10 on the agenda is exempt under paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as amended. Therefore, members of the public and press will be excluded from the meeting whilst committee discuss in closed session. Is that agreed? Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, please? No. Item 4, minutes of the Audit Committee meeting held on the 24th of July 25. Can the minutes be moved as a true and accurate record?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Item 5, Audit Committee Action Log. As all members have read the report, can I ask Peter Jackson, Head of Internal Audit, if he wishes to bring any specific issues to members' attention or anything to add since the report was drafted? Peter.
Thank you, Chair. No, nothing further to add. All the actions have been completed.
Does any member wish to speak? Is there a proposal to agree the recommendation as set out within paragraph 3 of the report?
Yes, Chair.
Is that seconded? Thank you. The recommendation is agreed. Item 6, breaches and waivers to the Council's Contract Procedure Rules, CPRs. As all members have read the report, can I ask Holly Wilson, Head of Procurement, if she wishes to bring any specific issues to members' attention or have anything to add since the report was drafted? Holly?
Thank you, Chair. As the Chair said, I'll take the report as read. This report covers the period from the 1st of March to the 31st of August 2025. It's a positive compliance viewpoint for against contract procedure rules where there's been 0 breaches for this period and 9 waivers have been granted, which was a decrease from 13 for the previous period. I've included a graph in the report to give some historical context to the amount of waivers and breaches over the years since 2017. The Appendix 1 shows the breaches, if there were any, and also the resolved breach, which is detailed in the report. Appendix 2 shows the 9 waivers that have been approved for this period. And Appendix 3 shows the contracts awarded versus the number of waivers in value and both number awarded for that period. In Appendix 3, you'll see that there's a higher value of waivers than is usual, and that's due to one of the waivers being granted for basically NRS went into administration, so we had to do an immediate award to a new supplier, and that was 7.5 million. And Appendix 4 shows the amount of officers that have currently completed the training against CPRs and procurement, which is mandatory across the council, which is at 93%, I believe, from recollection. At 94%, sorry. I'm open to questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Holly?
Thank you. Just in terms on page 13, we're looking at the percentages at the bottom of the table. How do we look in comparison to other local authorities with that kind of percentage? And happy to, have that sent to me afterwards if you don't have that data available right this second. And then the second thing was, just in terms of the way the waivers are reported, I don't know whether we can possibly put another column in here where it says there's the directorate title and then the waiver category. There's not really much context there for somebody to kind of understand where that has been spent. So, for example, 3.1, supply and installation of ice machine, doesn't really give any context as to where that is. That's just for my own understanding of where we are. If that could be added, that would be great. But that's it from me.
Just to answer the initial question, I assume you mean on Appendix 3, the percentages that of waivers awarded and value?
Yeah, just how we compare to other local authorities, please. Cheers.
We've tried to do this previously. It's really hard for us to compare against other LAs because they have different rules. Obviously, our contract procedure rules are agreed by members and are wrote into our constitution. So we find it quite hard to benchmark. I'm more than happy to. I sit on a Yorkshire and Humber Heads of Procurement, Strategic Procurement Group it's called. So I'll definitely put that call out and see if I can get some figures. But we do have different levels of and the way that we waiver things. So I'll definitely investigate and I'll send that on. With regards to the extra column, are you wanting just sort of the department? Because that ice machine, for example, was the market. Oh, sorry.
If you go to Appendix 2, if we just sort of step you through what information's there, it'll probably answer your question. So the directorates, the second column of all the waivers, and in the ice machine example, it talks about its place. And then it goes on to give a reason for the waiver. So I didn't know if you'd spotted that, if that provided you with that information that you wanted.
Yeah, no, my point being is more in terms of where is this ice machine? Where is it installed?
Markets, fish market.
Yeah, so from my point of view, that could have been in DRI, it could have been in the dome, it could have been anywhere. It's just kind of giving us a little bit more context for us to understand where the spend is.
So point taken, we'll make sure that the narrative's more fully expansive.
Are there any further questions? Is there a proposal to agree the recommendations as set out within paragraphs 6 and 7 of the report?
Agree, Chair.
Is that seconded? Thank you. The recommendations are agreed. Item 7, Internal Audit Report for the period July to September 2025. As all members have read the report, can I ask Peter Jackson, Head of Internal Audit, if he wishes to bring any specific issues to the members' attention or have anything to add since the report was drafted? Peter?
Thank you, Chair. So this is my report, which is in the standard format, although I obviously appreciate that it's still very relatively new or new to several of the members here today. So it's in 5 parts. Part 1 is the plan changes that have taken place during the period. Part 2 is the work undertaken. There's some key work that's listed in there. We've got 2 limited assurance opinions. There's some work that's been carried out around the airport reopening, and there's also some additional work that's been done to support the annual governance statement. In terms of overdue actions, these have increased quite noticeably from 24 to 50 as at the end of September, but I do have an updated number that I can provide you with when you start asking me some questions. Part 4, the key part is that I'm still confident of being able to give a positive opinion over our risk governance and control arrangements. And part 5 is continuing on with our business of getting compliant with the new global internal audit standards. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Does anyone have any questions? Can you talk us through the actions outstanding, please, Peter?
Yes, so as of yesterday, we've got those 50 overdue actions down to 32. So that's a much better position than where we were at the end of September. You should note that these are medium or low level actions, and we haven't got any high level actions that's overdue, so that is positive. However, I think I am noting with caution the amount of the lower level ones. There's a rising trend, and what we've agreed as a governance group is that we are going to be reporting on that number as part of the finance and performance reporting going forward to give a bit better visibility over it and raise the profile. And there's also various actions that I'm taking with management alongside my staff, helping support them through the implementation. So I'm hoping that we can start getting that figure down going forward, Chair.
How does it break down per directorate now?
Okay, so in terms of the, let me just get to the relevant page here. Yeah, so in terms of the revised figures, we reported adult wellbeing and culture with 21, they're now down to 13. Children and young people, that's 1, although that is now a 0. Corporate resources, we are now down to 9. Chief executives remains at 0, and place have reduced down to 9.
Chair, can I just add, just in terms of, as Pete explained, we currently report the high. So where it's classified as high, those are already reported in the quarterly performance stats. So these are discussed by, at the management teams. These are also reported to the ELT, they're also, so they're incorporated into that. And just wanted to kind of highlight what Pete said is that the lower medium, we're going to start reporting them just to kind of get that, you know, that oversight really in terms of, so we're having that conversation at management teams as well. And also what we've discussed is at the moment, the lower medium, they're sent to the relevant manager, but what we've said is we'll start circulating that to service directors as well, so that they're aware where there's you know, those outstanding as well, so that we can just put more emphasis really in terms of getting them reduced. But as Pete says, the work that they've done this time has actually over the last month has considerably improved that position as well.
What proportion over time turn from low to medium to high, or do they not go from low to medium to high? Do they just go straight in at high?
Yes, it all depends on the initial assessment of the risk. Sometimes actions can be taken in the course of implementing a risk which might start reducing the risk down, because there might be a number of facets that have to be undertaken to complete the task. So sometimes it will get reduced, but it's based on the initial assessment generally.
Have we identified any kind of trending key blockers to the mediums not being completed?
No, I generally think it's capacity. It's just it's time really. And as Pete said, he's not got any concerns really with those that haven't been. So they've been through them all. They've kind of got assurance that either things are happening or things are taking place. Like some of them are PCI DSS or requirement to be certified. We need the core secure, so we need to implement the system. So things are just taking a bit longer than what we initially said. But Pete hasn't got any. I'm talking for you here, Pete, but hasn't raised any concern.
Any more questions? Councillor Cockbeat.
Just looking at Children, Young People's and Families Director, there's a couple of examples in there. I'm conscious you might not be able to go into much detail, but could some of these been prevented before coming at risk? I'm just wondering with one of the cases that are listed on there, and what is being done to make an assurance to prevent that happening.
So are we talking about the two limited assurance opinions ones? Yeah, so the first one is an education establishment. It came to our attention, service management did ask for our intervention to look over the governance arrangements, because quite a significant deficit had been incurred by the establishment, and they wanted our sort of input as to what was going off in terms of why that had arisen. Was the school well managed from a governance perspective? And our review found that there were significant areas for improvement at the school, which is the responsibility of its governing body. Could we have noted it earlier? I think that's a lessons learned for us, so we are looking at that. There has been a wider review done by management at this particular establishment, and our findings are part and parcel of a number of other measures, and we've also got to look internally at ourselves and say, could we have identified this area? So that is something that's come out of that particular piece of work.
Yeah, I can add a little bit more as well, because we've had discussions, and I know particularly with Lee, in terms of what we could have done differently, what we could have, and what we're going to put in place in future. So not to, Lee's just sat down, but there is something we can add more really in terms of the school improvement and how we're so that there's actions taken probably earlier before some of the escalations. So we're just talking about the educational establishment. And
good morning, Rihanna Nelson, Director of Children's Services. So just to add to what Faye was saying is we are in conversations with the particular school, looking at their governing arrangements and speaking to the department and other colleagues around the best way forward in terms of bringing stability to the school, making sure that the governance is working more effectively and that we've got robust systems in place to monitor the progress that we're making in terms of that.
Okay, and so on to the second limited assurance opinion. This was the panel's review work that we did, there were no, there were high-risk findings identified, but there's nothing too technical there for management to be able to address. There were basically some gaps in some of the panel arrangements. Terms of reference need to be tighter, minutes need to be better documented, and there is a number of actions already underway that we're aware of to address those findings. So those are sort of in progress. I don't know if management want to add a little bit more detail to that.
Yeah, just to say, we actually asked Audit Committee to look at our panel arrangements because we wanted the internal scrutiny on that. We've checked that. We've welcomed the recommendations. We've got an action plan in place, and most of the actions on the action plan is already either in progress or completed. So we thank Audit for doing that piece of work for us because we really wanted to have the rigour.
Any further questions? Yeah.
Just further come back to the first limited assurance one. Obviously, yeah, I appreciate there's going to be a lot of work identified, but I'm just wondering, again, whether you can share more. I imagine it's down to governors and governor training. I'm just making an assumption a little bit there. Do schools report in who their governors are and what training they do? Is that something that's being picked up in the going forward? Apologies.
I think I came in the right time. So in terms of we have got robust governors trainers training in place. I think it was just circumstances that led us to a point where we've had some weakness in the management of that particular school in conjunction with the governing body having some issues. So I think it was a perfect storm to be true, Councillor Kobe, so that's why we're dealing with it. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Rebecca. Are you okay with that? No, that's fine.
Any further questions? No? So is there a proposal to agree the recommendations as set out within paragraph 20 of the report? Is that seconded? Thank you. So item 8, Statement of Accounts and Annual Governance Statement 24-25. Draft ISA 260 report to those charged with governance. As all members have read the report, can I ask Faye Ty, as Service Director for Finance and Technology, if she wishes to bring any specific items to members' attention or has anything to add since the report was drafted? Faye.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing to add to the report as drafted. Just to say, really, in terms of the final accounts, the statement of accounts are attached, plus the final annual governance statement as well. Minda from Grant Thornton is here to answer or to outline the ISA 260 as well. Just to highlight, thank you for attending all the training and all the work that has been done in terms of informing you on what's in the accounts and what the estimates are based on. And again, thank you to the team for the excellent work producing what I think is a high quality set of accounts again. And to external audit as well for the approach and thorough checks.
Thanks. Thanks, Faye. I just wanted to talk members through some of the key highlights from the audit findings report, which sort of sets out the work that we've undertaken on the Council's 24-25 financial statements. If you turn to page 64, the headlines, so we obviously completed our work as planned from June to November. We've identified 4 agreed adjustments to the financial statements, which are set out on page 64. 3 of them relate to IFRS 16, and 1 relates to an incorrect charge to the CIES on a revaluation movement. I think it's worth drawing out that IFRS 16 was introduced for the first time in 2024-25 at all local authorities. It is a complex piece of work requiring the authority to review all leases and lease arrangements that it has in place. So a lot of work has been undertaken by council officers within the finance department around that, and generally speaking, there were no other issues arising. However, given the complex nature of it, we did identify the items set out there. The biggest one in terms of an adjustment was an understatement of rental leases by 24.5 million relating to Doncaster Sheffield Airport, where there had been a rent movement which hadn't been picked up erroneously. And then there were other adjustments relating to schools PFI and a smaller adjustment relating to items dismissed in terms of leases. All the changes have been updated by management in the updated set of accounts, and I think it's worth drawing out that none of those amendments have any impact on the council's balances in terms of reserves. In addition to those items, we also found some disclosure and presentational audit adjustments which are set out in the report, and we raised one recommendation. Our audit work is now substantially complete and subject to finalisation and reviewing final elements. We will be in a position to conclude the audit work subject to the point set out on page 65. And that includes getting a signed letter of representation and us reviewing the final amended accounts to make sure all the changes have been appropriately processed as well. Just turning over the page onto page 66. Value for money, we've completed our work. The next agenda item includes the auditor's annual report, which we'll touch on, and we made 3 key recommendations in that regard. The other couple of things I just want to draw to your attention is materiality, which is on page 75. We set materiality each year, and it was based originally on the prior year draft accounts, prior year audited accounts for 23-24. On receipt of the draft accounts for 24-25, there had been a movement, an increase in spend, and therefore we revised materiality as set out on page 75. In terms of the key focus of the audit, we identify key risks at planning, and those have been set out on pages 78 onwards. Management override of controls is one area that all auditors are required to consider. We found no issues in that regard. And then just moving on, the other key areas relate to the valuation of land and buildings, given how big the balance is on the council's balance sheet, which includes council dwellings. And we noted that some land and buildings were not revalued during the year, which you were allowed to do. But we did note an adjustment of 1.4 million, an increase in value, which hadn't been processed on the grounds of materiality. So that has been recorded as an unadjusted error in the details further on in the report. The other big item on the council's balance sheet is the pension fund net balance. Again, we undertook work in that area. And we just noted a disclosure issue in terms of the accounts did not include a reconciliation of the movement in the asset ceiling as required by the SITFA code. So again, that's something that the council has now added. I've already talked about IFRS 16. So just moving on. There were some issues in terms of our IT follow-up work, which we've set out in the report, and that's summarised on page 95. Each year we ask for written management representations, which I mentioned earlier, and we've made a specific representation relating to equal pay liabilities, which we've drawn out on page 97. We understand that there are no changes required to the council's accounts. The audit adjustments, the 4 I've talked about, are set out on pages 104 and 105. And the other misclassification and disclosure changes are set out on the pages which follow up to page 106. 9, I beg your pardon. The unadjusted differences I refer to, one relating to the valuation of land and buildings of 1.4 million, which hasn't been adjusted, is set out on page 110, along with another more minor adjustment which was identified of 678,000, given the amount was just above triviality. It was not processed by management as well. So those two areas would require to bring to your attention so that you are aware of them. None of those adjustments has any impact on the council's general fund balances. The one recommendation we have raised is set out on page 112 relating to that revaluation movement, which was incorrectly charged to the CIES, and management has accepted that recommendation, and we will follow up that work as part of our procedures for next year. Page 120, just want to draw to your attention that we remain independent of the council and are able to give you an objective opinion. Our fees are set out on page 122. And then there are draft letter of representation and the draft audit opinion, which are shown in the appendices which follow. I think that's all I wanted to say, but I'll pause and happy to take any questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
I suppose one for me, being new on the audit committee, is how clear and transparent was your process in terms of how the council dealt with you and your auditors?
That's an interesting question. So our relationship in terms of working with council officers has always been very professional. They are very cooperative. We have regular meetings throughout the year. They keep us briefed on issues arising, such that when we come to do the audit, there are no surprises for us, and that also helps us plan our risk and the focus of our work. Working papers have generally been good, and I think that is borne out by the fact that Doncaster as a council has not had any of its audit opinions backstopped, as other authorities up and down their country have, given the challenges that many have faced following sort of the impact of COVID. So you are one of the few authorities where your accounts have been generally audited to timetable without any issues, and I think that in large part is due to the hard work and cooperation of the finance team led by Faye and the good level of cooperation that we have with them.
Any further questions? Can I just ask about the 24.5 million? I'm assuming that was just an accounting error. But what is the impact moving forward for that? How does it show in the accounts, and what difference would it have made if it had been done correctly? Page 64.
Yeah, so what this error was, it related to the fact that under IFRS 16, you need to recognise a right of use asset and a lease liability for leases. And because of the lease arrangement that you have with Doncaster Sheffield Airport is in sort of segments, you'd based it on a certain assessment on the first segment, but failed to pick up the fact that it changed a little bit further down the line. So you just missed. So in essence, on the accounts, it's just a balance sheet that the values actually go up on both sides, but it does not have a direct revenue impact.
Thank you. I made some notes and I can't find what page my notes relate to now because I did it on the computer and I've got paper, so you have to forgive me. But I have later on put numbers, so it'll be easier. I've written down here that I'm presuming it's in this report. There's a conflict of interest being... Is that the next one? Okay, that's fine then. Has anybody got any more questions on this one?
I'm just looking at the valuation. I can't find the page. I literally scrolled past it again. So apologies. I think it's 100 and something. I'm just getting there. Obviously, it was supposed to be, from what I understand, was revalued every 5 years, but hadn't on this occasion and was meant to. Is there a reason why, and will that be addressed going forward with the revaluation?
Yeah, we don't. Sorry, Matthew Smith, Head of Financial Management. Yeah, we don't need to do them all, as Perminda said. I'm not 100% sure what happened in that exact instance and why it wasn't done, to be honest. But we will be reviewing what we do and making sure it's more robust in the future, as we do with everything that comes out of the audit. Basically, any change is looked at as to why, and we change what we do to make sure we don't make the same mistakes again. Does that answer it?
Probably give a little bit more. Basically, all your assets have got to be evaluated every 5 years, and we've got a programme of work to do that. And sometimes what they're highlighting is that programme, how that ties in with the accounts. There's a little bit of disconnect. We've had this before. We're upgrading ERP system, and we're hoping that as part of that we'll have a module which is about asset valuation. So there's a complete connection between, between the asset valuation, because it's just it's a book entry in terms on balance sheet. So we need the integrity of that information, but we haven't got it totally right at the moment because the valuations are being done by a separate team and the information's being held separately. So we're alive to that because we've had this sort of issue before where there's been, it was actually the opposite one, Tip Perminda, about 3 years ago, where when the Savoy was built, the valuation for that actually decreased from the asset build. So the opposite was true. We hadn't incorporated that, the value reduction. So yeah, it's just something in terms of we're alive to it.
I think it's also highlighting that the IFRS 16 is new as well in terms of the treatment of the leases. So
that was earlier point, wasn't it?
Can I just ask, and I'm sure it's on this one because it's on my notes, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. We talk about peppercorn rents and leases. That's in this report, isn't it? So we've now done a piece of work, because I know I've spoken about it before about peppercorn rents and leases, and we're never quite been sure how many of each we've got. So do we have that information now? It's to do with the new changes, I think.
Yeah, well, yes, because as part of implementing the new changes, we review every lease we have. So as a result of that, we've got a list of more. Obviously, I haven't got it here in front of me, but we should have something that should be more comprehensive than anything we've ever had before. Because the changes mean we've had to look at everything, which is where some of the issues came up in that we look at everything and then, oh, there's another one. So yeah, I'm assuming you're wanting that.
I thought I still had the page, but it's yeah, it does. It, as Matt's saying, it's just in the notes to the auditor's report, which is on their page 11. It's effectively saying we need to have all, as part of that new assessment, we need to have peppercorn rentals included. But as I said, this system, which is going to be more comprehensive and make sure that the different elements of the system are all joined together, we'll capture all that information. We've got a process of building it and then populating it, so there will be a transition. But yeah, that's the ambition.
So do we have a timescale for that?
Yep, we're targeting implementing the ERP in the summer of 27. So there's a long period to prepare and kind of get things in place. We're currently undertaking workshops to look at the design and so having those conversations really with the supplier in terms of how it's going to be set up. But there's a long timetable to get there, but then that looking to implement summer 27.
I'd probably just say, sorry, Chair, to chip in again, is that from an expectations management point of view, there's something about the system, and then there's the integrity of the content of the information. So whilst Faye's just set out the design and build of the system, that isn't going to be like magic one time where all the information's contained within that. It's a bit like when we did Mosaic and the children's system and adults, is that there's something about designing the system, building the system and then populating it, and they're not all done in the same time period. So it's probably going to be cyclical, because I've just described we don't undertake all of our asset valuations every year because it's not a requirement, and we don't have, so this will be a case of building information and getting more confidence about that information as time progresses.
So you're alluding to the fact that maybe leases won't go on the new system until they get renegotiated? Or is there an ambition to do, because I know some leases are obviously 100-year leases, aren't they? So that would just, you'd be working on it for a long time.
No, I wouldn't say lease renegotiation. I would say it was probably about the integrity, because there'll be, as part of what any system new build, there's building the system and then populating it, migrate it. So we'll have to, and we're not at that stage at this point, about how we migrate the data that we have into the new system. Sometimes you can do that through uploads where it's massive, and there's the integrity between, between one system or the other. Sometimes if there's disconnect between that, you need to hard code it in, and if we're getting into the hard coding of the data into the new system, that will take some time, but it won't be down to the renegotiation. It'll just be down to the logistics of getting the information on, and then over time what I'm describing is that there's as part of any reviews, then that information then goes on the new system. So that in that regard, in terms of ensuring it's complete and accurate, that's going to take some time. But the actual migration of information, we did talk about it at the previous audit committee, didn't we, about, because the previous audit chair was particularly interested in the EMP implementation because of the how important it is to ensure the internal control arrangements. It's what I call like part of the spine of the organisation, and that's in part why we are enthusiastic about the new system having all these other components and having that integration rather than having separate feeder systems. So that might be something that we come back in terms of an informal meeting or to actually outline that as part of the confidence about control arrangements.
Yeah, it's something we've highlighted previously, and it is a significant change and a risk really in terms of the organisation, so hence why it's been highlighted. We are at the early stages in terms of doing that design, but we have, as I kind of, I suppose, intimated really in terms of we've been through a procurement exercise, so we are working with the supplier really in terms of that design, and there will be further, we're just at an early stage, there will be a lot further conversations and further updates really in terms of how it's progressing, the assessment in terms of the migration. We've also going to involve Salford, who undertake our ICT audits, and they are going to do some early work in terms of looking at the system, looking at the implementation plan and things like that as well, aren't they? So we'll also, as part of the progress report, be reporting through that in terms of the outcome of their work and what they identify as well. So I don't know whether Pete wants to say anything about the work that Salford are going to do as well, because that's specific from an audit perspective in terms of that implementation as well. And there'll be we'll obviously be working and updating in terms of Perminda and the team in terms of how on the implementation as well.
Yeah, so just picking up Faye's comment their chair. We have our IT auditors provided externally by Salford, and we're commissioning them to do a due diligence piece of work. I suppose it is that we've got everything lined up correctly in terms of the delivery of the ERP implementation. It's going to be a short, sharp piece of work, just making sure that we've got everything in place, and subject to agreeing timings, it will be brought, as Faye said, to the next the next audit committee via my progress report.
Absolutely.
Thanks for that. So just talking about timings, have we got a deadline for that migration? And then do we have a further like kind of sanity check after we've done that to make sure that the information that's on the current system has been sent across and is accessible? Are those deadlines in place? And if not, can we set one?
Yeah, there's a detailed programme plan in terms of how we get to the implementation. So it's kind of design, build, test. They are doing the build and test at the same time as well, and then we implement. So we're implementing after close down, so we're looking at implementing in May, June time. Also, I suppose I really highlight really that the supplier is Technology One, and they've kind of provided some information really in terms of the ambition. They're highlighting that. So we are. It's not just a finance system, it's finance and assets. So I think if there's going to be further detail in the progress report, I wasn't going to hold you to that, Pete. I wasn't sure which progress report it'd go in, but if there's going to be further information in the next progress report, I think we can add further information really in terms of the timescales, the timeline, a bit of that as well to support that.
And just assuming, Technology One is going to be working for us. Are we, in terms of the contract that we have with them, got any penalties that we can put towards them if they don't hit that date? Or is there something else going on that we can not drag it out any longer than it has to be dragged out?
We'll put some further information in the report next time, but yeah, we can't drag it out. We're going to need to implement. We will be looking at that that transition and that implementing the new system, and there might be things that happen, but we're working really closely with Technology One. There is a contract. There will be there'll be the usual penalties within that, but we are working very closely as a team to implement. But we need to implement it safely, because this is such a this is our finance system. This is where we pay people. Pay suppliers, obviously. So it's so important that we get that implementation right. So we will be working very closely with Technology One on that, and we'll keep providing updates. Like I say, we're just at the initial design phases now, but we'll keep the committee updated really in terms of progress.
Thank you. I think just to add to Faye's comments, I think on any implementation of a major IT system, it's important not to rush it. There are many examples up and down the country in local government where finance systems have been implemented quickly and it's resulted in major problems, which then takes an awful long time to sort out. So I think monitoring it is going to be key. Once you're happy that the trial running works, that will be the time at which to then transition to a live system, but only when you are ready.
Councillor Jackson.
So what we're saying then is that this is going to be bespoke to Doncaster? No? So there are systems already in place?
Yeah, it's not bespoke to Doncaster. No, it's a national system that other authorities are implementing. Again, we can provide some more information really in terms of other. It is kind of new to the UK, but there are other councils that are implementing, and we're working closely with some of those as well. So we can provide some further information in terms of who uses it, or like say, I'll provide a link to the website as well. Councillor Jackson, so you can have a look at the supplier as well.
Sorry, so it's an actual proven system? Yeah. So it shouldn't take too long to actually implement?
We are being very ambitious with the implementation. As I said, we are looking to make efficiencies as well through the use of this system. So we are as I said, looking at assets and kind of reducing duplication, having that flow through. So we are looking probably to implement maybe more than what others are as well. But we've already got quite a good footprint in terms of our current system and how we're utilising that. So we're just wanting to build on that as much as possible. So where we can kind of bring in other systems, then that's obviously better because it's cheaper. We can save money on those other systems as well. So it is a big implementation. I don't want to kind of underestimate really in terms of the work that is needed. And working with it's a variety of services across the council. So we'll be working with highways, street lighting. We're working with a number of, because it's assets and the finances, and also that change management piece is so important. To make sure that everybody can use the system, because we do have kind of everyone in the departments raising orders directly. So we need to get that change management right too as well. So it is something that we will need to come back to as a committee.
Councillor Cobby.
Just picking up on this, and pages from 114 in the report regards to obviously IT. Obviously one part that's flagged up is governance. So any new system, how would you governance that, and also address some of the issues on here? It says we'll report back in a follow-up report. So just want to make sure governance is part of any IT structure going forward, and also to resolve the existing issues as well.
So we have ERP governance set up. We have a number of representatives on governance. I've talked previously about the Technology Governance Board as well. So we have a Technology Governance Board overall, and generally we have individual boards depending on the extent of the change. So we've got an ERP program board as well set up, which Technology One are on as well. So as I say, we're working together on this, and we provide regular updates to ELT, and as I said, Salford are doing an internal audit as well, so we'll be highlighting if they have any concerns from a governance perspective. I think if you're talking about some of the actual the prior year audit actions, they were about specific systems, and we're going to have an internal discussion just to make sure we're clear really in terms of how that impacts, and just that we definitely clear them off.
Any further questions?
Sorry. Just in terms of the change management piece for this transfer, I'm assuming that we're going to maintain full accessibility to the old system, and we've got a documented rollback procedure if the new system isn't going to be effective. Is that right?
Like Perminda says, we won't go live unless we're absolutely sure that the new system can do what we need to do, because the council wouldn't function. It's that important. That's why I call it, it's like the spine of the organisation. And because we are incorporating all these other ancillary as faces, we've already got an extensive footprint in how the ERP links with other service delivery activities, and our ambitions about extending that. Hence the reason why we've had this useful segue around from a leaser's point of view and an asset valuation. We've got more this product can help in terms of supporting and mitigating using all those other ancillary systems, but consequently it means you're putting more eggs in one basket, and that is the risk for the organisation. So we absolutely need to make sure that we're comfortable with it, and we will before we flick the switch.
So can I just ask, page 174, it says that the pension contribution should, you're going to, I think it's, I've just found it should in 25-26 be reviewed and lowered. Just the word should. What's the process for the review? 174. 174? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So they undertake a triannual pension revaluation, which follows an actuary review. We're been in discussions with South Yorkshire Pensions Authority about the actuarial valuation for 26-27 onwards, and there's going to be proposals, there's going to be changes in the budget as a result of that valuation as well, so we'll be reporting that through the budget. And so yeah, it's been undertaken, there's been an actuarial valuation which South Yorkshire Pensions Authority lead on with the actuary, and then we need to update our budgets and update the on cost as a result.
Yeah, because I think it alludes in this paragraph that you're going to use the money that you save from that to fund something else. So it's just there's an overspend. It's going to be funded by that overspend. So if it wasn't to come through, it's the 5th paragraph down. It says, on the other hand, so the outlook has been reviewed since the approval of the budget in consideration of the 24-25 outturn. There is likely to be a pressure created by the 25-26 pay award exceeding that budgeted 2% increase. On the other hand, the outlook for the pension fund is more positive and a reduced contribution should be possible from 26-27. So what would we do if we didn't get the reduced pension?
It is reducing. So the percentage is reducing because we're in a surplus position on the pension fund. So it is reducing by about 4%. So there will be savings and we will be incorporating them into the budget.
I'd probably just say that this is a timing thing because obviously the report is written at a particular point in time, so that's probably phased terminology to hedge your bets, because discussions are still taking place with the South Yorkshire Pension Fund and other South Yorkshire Directors of Finance, because it needs to be an agreed position that's now being formalised. So it's gone from a should to a could to a definite.
Generally, the wordings come from the budget last year. Generally, and like I say, we update as part of the outturn. But yeah, we've had those conversations now, and we've confirmed what the percentage is to South Yorkshire Pensions. I think we did that back at the end of October, so that has been.
Page 227, it says it talks about grant clawback. Is it something do we have a lot of grant clawback, or is it just something you have to report on in here? .227, the bottom.
Generally, I suppose I'd just say generally, no, we don't have a lot of grant clawback, but Matt will answer in terms of specific.
I was going to say generally we don't have a lot of grant clawback. Generally, I'd go further. I can't remember the last time we had any. This is in here. This is specifically in here because part of the government, I can't remember which part, wants some money back or wanted some money back related to derelict land grant, which goes back to the 1980s. So we had discussions with them. Going back 10 years. They've never followed it up, but we've provided for the fact that they might follow it up tomorrow. Basically, that's a short version of it. So theoretically, they could come back and say, we want that money, and we've set the money aside in order to be able to pay them the money, basically. We ought to be thinking about actually releasing it. So it's kind of the opposite. So no, not even we don't do it generally, not even we don't do it very often at all, but actually there's an opportunity here to take the money back out because we probably don't need to provide for it, given the length of time since the last communication with them, which is 6, 7, 8 years, literally. By now, yeah. When we created it, it was the right thing to do. But as the years go by and someone's knocking on your door, you start thinking, we don't need it.
We'll review that as part of the accounts for 25-26.
Page 242, the second table down, there's a really bizarre number, and it's just probably me not being an accountant that I don't know how to read it. But discounting to present value, that number just seems... I don't know, I can't quite work it out.
It's not right. well spotted, and will it looks like it's either not truncated it or the comma's in the wrong place. So yeah.
This is my last one. You wish I didn't read this, didn't you? Page 252, it talks about trust funds. Can you just explain why a council will be involved in trust funds? Because it says the council has an interest, but it does not form part of the council's finances, some bit.
This is where we look after monies on behalf of other people. Yeah. So it's like people who are in, are going to pay supported living or something, where they might have, they haven't got the ability to look after the monies themselves, and we're acting on their behalf. So the obligation is that we act in a sort of ethical way in order to make sure, and as though if the monies were being looked after by somebody else, they would probably stick it in an interest earning account and sort of and get interest, and so we're no different in this regard. It's where somebody hasn't got the wherewithal.
Peter?
Yeah, this area is overseen by the SAPAT team, which is the Safeguarding Adults Personal Assets team, and they operate under an appointeeship arrangement for vulnerable adults, so they oversee these monies, so this is what the monies relate to.
Thank you. Does anyone have any further questions? Councillor Cobby.
Changing subject slightly, obviously in the report, many reports in here, it talks about the DSG and SEN funding, and there seems to be a bit of a plan, try and reduce some costs. We know it's going to be increasing. On page 156, I just want to know a bit more, how was that going forward, because it says about time frames and how it is, and also kind of anything that might be something considering going forward as well.
Yeah, can I just say a couple of things, and then I'll hand on to Rihanna. I think I just wanted to highlight that the figures that are included in the and it is coming on in the next report, the annual letter as well, are Q1. So Rihanna might want to just touch really in terms of, we will be publishing Q2 soon as part of the quarterly finance and performance improvement report as well. So I just wanted to highlight really in terms of the information that's included in these reports, and Rihanna will cover.
Thank you very much. So you will see with me that I've got a number of colleagues with me today, this morning, and this is my team that are responsible in managing and handling all of our operations, but in particular with a focus on DSG, or the high needs block within the DSG that's overspending, and our services to children with special educational needs or a disability. We are taking this particular area very, very seriously, and over the last 2 to 3 years we've been looking at it, but in earnestly over the last 6 to 9 months we've been acutely aware of the overspend significantly increasing. And just to provide a bit of context, you will know that nationally we are facing a significant increase in demand and complexity of children that's presenting with special educational needs. And you will see it since 2014, education, health and care plans has risen by 140% nationally. If you look at our numbers, we have seen a significant increase in the rate of education, health and care plans in terms of the management of them. And it's gone from 1,898 education, health and care plans in 2019. It's gone up to 3,315 and is continuing to grow. Those are the plans that we are managing at the minute. We have also seen since 2023, we've seen an increase of 29% in management of EHCPs in comparison to 23% nationally. The rate of the requests for plans, so I've just talked about what we are managing currently in the system. The rate of requests for plans has continued to rise over the last 3 years and rising from 597 in 2022 to 776 in 2024. So that is annually the amount of applications for education healthcare plans that we need to put through the system. And of course, when demand grows like that and complexity grows like that, you will then see a consequence of requests for specialist provision increasing significantly over that time. And so when you think about the deficit, we are seeing we are projecting to see a doubling of the deficit over the next 2 years in comparison to what it was. There are many commonalities with the national picture in terms of what's driving this. One is the increased demand for speech, language and communication needs and for autistic spectrum disorder continuum. There's pressure in the transitioning points that we're seeing in an over capacity of maintained special schools. So we know, for example, that across our specialist services or specialist provisions for children, we've got 950 places at the minute. And due to the amazing work that Lee and Martin and Rebecca has done over the last 3 months, we've sat down and we've looked at our high needs block, and we looked at the sufficiency, so the number of places we need to have to deal with the demand that's coming over the hill. So we've got 950 in placement at the minute, or 950 places at the minute. That is due to increase to 1,874. That's what we require. So we are roughly, we've got 924 places short. Now, unfortunately, we can't just magic school places, special school places. Our special schools are absolutely full to the brim, so we need to create our own sufficiency. And that comes to your point, Councillor Kobe, about what are we doing. So I'm going to hand over to Lee, who's been looking at sufficiency and has been driving that piece of work forward, to explain to you the numbers that we want to increase and which provisions we want to do that, to give you some assurance.
Thank you, Rihanna. For people that don't know me, I'm Lee Goltz. I'm one of the service directors in Children's Services here. So as Rihanna says, we are short of around 924 places. It's just important to note that when our special school capacity is full and a child is not able to be educated in a mainstream provision, it leaves us very little opportunities, and invariably they end up in an expensive out-of-area placement or an independent special school. And that's reflected in the increased cost that we see. So what we need to do is make sure we've got more spaces in Doncaster schools for Doncaster children. Not only is that better in terms of the outcomes for children, it will be cheaper. So as Rihanna says, there's some work we need to do. There's been a previous agreement of some capital funding that we've drawn down from the Department for Education in the summer of this year. It equates to about 6.7 million. And we also are looking at a Cabinet report, as it says in the annual governance statement, that will go on the 11th of February to Cabinet, asking to accept an extra 4.1 million. With that capital, we'll be able to significantly increase the number of local places. And that shakes down really to an extra 146 new special school places, 144 new places within our communication hubs, split across both primary and secondary. Significant increase of 200 places for our post-16. Young people, which reflects the trajectory of demand, and that's passing through the system since the pandemic. An extra 100 places for our young people at Key Stage 2 and 3. And a small number of places, around 10 or 12, some of our most complex young people that are out of area, and we're finding it as a challenge to bring back because we can't find a suitable educational placement for them. There are challenges around all that, not least based on, as you know, the massive increases in demand that we're seeing nationally and the complexity for some of our children and young people. I just want to reiterate, our vision is that we have as many children in Doncaster schools, and by investing in this capital and the work that we're doing around increasing the number of places, that will enable us to do that. A positive byproduct of that is that we'll mitigate further overspends on the high needs block, which forms part of DSG, because we are reducing the need for an increase of expensive out-of-area placements or independent special school places. I might have missed anything.
And just to be very clear, that is the way that we want to support our children and young people, children closer to home do better, living in within their communities do better. So we're building capacity in our mainstream system, as well as what Leah's just set out in terms of the specialist provision that we will require. It is not we are not going to wipe out the overspend, unfortunately, but we are doing everything to mitigate against to put in place some cost avoidance in terms of the DSG overspend. We are also awaiting the white paper. That's not been published. We're now expecting it in January. That will give us some steer in terms of how the system is going to change, because nationally we know that the system do need to change. Otherwise, most of local authorities will go under.
Faye?
Thank you. I just want to highlight a report that the County Councils Networks produced as well, which is really helpful in terms of, they did a survey of try to get as many responses from Section 151s, from Directors of Finance of councils, bringing together what the deficit is. You know, it's a really helpful report actually, and I'll circulate it to members as well. Just picking up that national position really in terms of that overall deficit, and what it you know, in terms of also that the spending, although the spending has increased, there's still the significant deficit. So I'll circulate that because it might be useful for members.
Councillor Barnett.
I've just got a couple of questions on this, if you don't mind. So, looking at the increase nationally, do we have any kind of national figures? And if not, do we have any local deep dives into the root cause of why the SEND applications have increased so rapidly in the last couple of years?
Yeah, so nationally, as I've indicated, we've got some, we are in line with national drivers around requests for speech and language communication need. And that's one of the things that we're seeing post-COVID, are that actually young people present with issues around speech and language. And so part of our strategy is to actually support schools to deliver, and actually early years to help children, young people to communicate. That's happened since COVID. And we've always seen an increase in autistic spectrum disorders. And so that continues to increase. So that's part of the presentations that we see. However, the system is aligned where parental preference is listened to first. So if you, for example, if you suspect that your child has got an additional need, the school and the local authority have to respond to that. So that kind of sets up a system where specialist provision is seen as the answer to support for a young person, where the steer is inclusion, and that we need to keep children in mainstream provision as long as possible. I'm going to hand over to Martin, because Martin will have a little bit more detail on this for us.
Martin Owen, Strategic Lead for Education. Thank you for the question. And it is a complex situation. And there are several recent reports which have tried to explain why we're in the situation where demand is rising. The first point to make is that need is changing in our schools and settings and families. And yesterday, ISOS and the Local Government Association published a paper called Rising Need, which is explaining what is happening in our early years with children, a rapidly changing picture of children's capabilities, particularly around language with young children. And the increase in autism over the course of the last 5 years has been stark and rapid as well, with older children being diagnosed with increasing regularity. But there are also, as Rihanna says, some systemic issues behind this national increase. And we can see, first of all, that with school budgets being very constrained and not having changed a great deal in the last number of years, school capability to be able to meet the increasing levels of need that are coming through is also under pressure. And when that happens, even though local authorities don't run schools, local authorities then must step in order to be able to fund packages of support. But also the last point really is that the Code of Practice for Special Educational Needs, which came out in 2014, was not designed for this volume of children and young people. So the redress system of tribunals, which was meant to deal with rare situations where children and young people were not getting the support they required, those have increased exponentially. And in Doncaster, from 3 in 2019 to 125 this year. And what we know is 98% of those tribunals do not find in favour of local authorities if local authorities challenge, because the code of practice is very kind of broad about what would be permissible support. So the consequence of that is, according to a recent report by the Institute for Fiscal Studies, that we are expecting nationally an in-year increase in the high needs deficit of around 60%. So it's a rapidly escalating situation. Most commentators would say that it is a legislation scenario to really make sure that the infrastructure is more sustainable, and we are seeing essentially very much the same sorts of patterns that most local authorities that we talk to also see.
Thanks for that answer. I think you've pretty much answered my second question, which was, are we reviewing on a national or local level the thresholds for the acceptance of special education need provision? And if we are, obviously there's a piece of work behind that, and we're not here to make policy. I'm just looking at where we spend. But if that's not happening, and we are at a deficit and we're working really hard to provide those extra places, but we're still having out-of-area placements, what are we doing in terms of not being at the mercy of being sculpted by these private institutions that may charge much more for education than the council would?
Thank you very much for the question. I think the first point to make is that what we've tried to do is respond to what we know is best practice around trying to get the best out of our mainstream system. So having reflected on some DFE research from 2022, our strategy was about making sure that every teacher in every school has as much capability, but also funding to trying to meet needs close to home. And so we have worked, and probably more than most local authorities I've heard of, to try and change practice at that point. And that takes time to work its way through to have impact. But we know that's the right thing. And that is very much the things that we've done reflected in where we think the national policy is likely to go. So more money to support mainstream, more training to support mainstream. But also what we've tried to do is to be as robust as we can be when we're making decisions that do escalate beyond what schools do. And I think we are confident now that a lot of the decision making that we're making is the right, and where we need to be able to support schools to do more, then that's one of the things that we do. But I think national policy wise, we can see that the government's direction of travel is to invest in inclusion in schools, which we consider the right thing, but also to make sure that there is a way of defining what complexity looks like, where a child is complex enough to require a special school, that there is some clear framework for being able to make those decisions. And whilst we try to do that, as we've already sort of talked about really, is quite complex in terms of being able to get to challenge some of those decisions that might be made through a tribunal. The government's also promised through the white paper that they will be looking at how the private sector operates, and so that I think is part of what the information they've been reviewing, which has led to the delay in the white paper that is published in January.
Yeah, and to add to that, I also think that local authorities, through the white paper, we will see that local authority powers will be improved again. So through the academisation process, what we've seen is academies are in charge of how they handle and manage inclusion. Local authorities, for example, are not able to open special schools or a school anymore, so we are relying on the market to do that for us. And hopefully we will see some changes of that within the white paper that will help us with that. I think your point about what are we doing locally to not be at the mercy of private providers is exactly what Leah set out, to create our own spaces, to expand our current special school offer, and to make sure that we've got the right places based on the need and on the place.
Just come in on that. In terms of just adding some scrutiny as well, between the 8th and 12th of December, we've invited 2 peer reviews of our system, so the Local Government Association and also peers from Wakefield are coming down to speak to ourselves, partners in the system, really just to kind of scrutinise the work that we're doing. So, for example, is what we've just said today around our sufficiency plan, are they the right things? We're confident they are, but it's always good to get some additional scrutiny on that. They're going to look at some of the sufficiency. They're also going to check some of our funding formulas, pricing arrangements, and some of our early years provision. So it will just add another layer of scrutiny and expertise into the system to help with our thinking.
Any further questions?
Talking about the out of area, is there a maximum route or radius that you would actually send children?
No, but we absolutely keep our children as close as possible to home. And Martin, I don't know if you want to say a little bit about what special provision we do use.
Yeah, as much as possible. I mean, I say fortunate. We are fortunate to have a number of high quality independent provisions close to Doncaster city centre. And we try to place as much as possible within a reasonable travelling distance. So whenever we make a decision, the travelling distance is factored in. There has always been, for very low incidence needs, where you have children with extreme levels of complexity and need to place them in the nearest place that is able to meet their needs. And sometimes those sorts of schools are so rare that you might find that they are set in a different part of the country. But that is a very rare scenario. The majority of those youngsters in out-of-authority placements are either not technically out of authority, but we call them out of authority, placed in Doncaster, Rotherham or surrounding South Yorkshire areas.
Any further questions? No? Okay, is there a proposal to agree the recommendations as set out within paragraph 10 of the report? Thank you. So, item 9, Grant Thornton Auditor's Annual Report 24-25. As all members have read the report, can I ask Georgia Jones, Grant Thornton, if she wishes to bring any specific issues to members' attention or has anything to add since the report was drafted? Georgia.
Thank you, Chair. So first of all, apologies for my late arrival. Had some issues with the trains, but obviously got here just in time to do the report. So this is our auditor's annual report. So this is part of our work, which comes under the code, which is our value for money work. So just a reminder, we're not making a decision on whether the council provides value for money, but whether you have the arrangements in place to enable you to do so. So part of our work is the financial statements, which is kind of earlier on the agenda, and then this is the other part of it. So if I just take you to the executive summary, which is page 7 of the report, page 285 of the agenda. So as mentioned, we'll take the report as read, but what I'll do is I'll just go through the key recommendations that we've made, because they're probably the thing that you kind of need to kind of take notice of most. So we have 3 areas that we look at: financial sustainability, governance, and improving economy, efficiency and effectiveness. And you can see on that executive summary the ratings for last year, 23-24, and the ratings that we've allocated for 24-25. So just to also emphasise, this is a retrospective look at arrangements that were in place up to the 31st of March 2025. However, when we do have further information, we do try and incorporate that into the report, but obviously things may have moved on slightly since the kind of information that we've kind of looked at and reported on. So you can see that we have what we call a significant weakness in terms of financial sustainability, and we made a key recommendation. And we have also significant weaknesses for governments, in which we've made 2 key recommendations, which I will take you through now further in the report. So as you go through that report, you'll see the detail of the work that we've done. For example, in the financial sustainability section, which starts page 294 of the agenda. As you go through that, you'll see the different areas we've looked at and the different rating that we've given each area, and anything that we want to kind of report on to you around those arrangements. But if you go to page 297 of the agenda, page 19 of our report, that's the first key recommendation, and that is within financial sustainability. Now, that's around the dedicated schools grant, which obviously you've just had quite a bit of discussion and debate around. So it's really kind of, again, us highlighting to you that that kind of is increasing, and the rate of increase, you know, is kind of building kind of year on year. Now, obviously, there is a statutory override in place till March 2028, but potentially if that's not extended, or, you know, arrangements aren't confirmed, then, you know, the council would become liable for that deficit. So, and that would obviously have an impact on your financial sustainability. So it's really about kind of taking action to control the deficit, and, you know, colleagues and officers have explained some of the things, the actions that the council are taking to try and manage that going forward. So we will again look at that in our work in 25-26 to see how that's progressing, if the actions are having kind of sufficient impact, and we will report back to you again around that key recommendation. And then the other two key recommendations fall within the governance section, and they are really around the airport. So we have got kind of a separate section on that in terms of the work that we've done, and that starts on page 307 of the agenda, which is page 29 of the report. So it just really sets out for you, as you would imagine, it's a big project for the council, and there will be kind of risk around that project, whether that's financial or reputational. So we have had kind of, you know, quite a kind of good look at that in terms of the arrangements, what the council is doing to kind of gain assurance around that project, and how things are kind of moving as that project progresses. So we've set out our findings on the next few pages there, and we have kind of come up with two what we call key recommendations. So the first one is on page 310 of the agenda, page 32 of our report, and that's around kind of the refining the business case. So that is going on at the moment, and that review kind of was still ongoing, you know, at the point we have to really kind of draw a line and report on the work that we've done. So there was kind of, you know, movement between kind of the kind of original business case and then the final business case. So it's really us saying that you need to kind of really do the more detailed work around that to make sure that you've got kind of the latest estimates in there, you know, any kind of potential financial exposure for the council, and also maybe use some scenario planning to kind of work some of that through, you know, look into the future. And really, I think, you know, for us as auditors, we would want to see kind of really a kind of financial risk limit that the council is accepting, because the problem sometimes, I'm not saying this is the case here, but the problem is sometimes with these big projects, a lot of money goes into it. And then if it does start to go wrong, at what point do you know, draw a line and say, right, we're pulling out? Because the temptation always is, we put all this money in, we can't let it go, we need to put more in. And, you know, so you need that kind of, where will you draw the line? Where is your kind of off-ramp, as we call it, where you can, you know, what would be the point that potentially you would have to consider, you know, withdrawing from a project? So we're not saying we're at that point yet, and we're not saying that's going to happen. We're saying you need those kind of measures and controls and kind of, you know, barriers in place just to make sure that everything does keep on track, and it is kind of monitored closely, and you know what your risk tolerance is around that. And then really it's making sure there is kind of quite sophisticated risk reporting and clear protocols, again, as that project kind of gets into, you know, the further kind of medium term. Again, you need that kind of real close review of kind of potential risks and how they're going to be managed and escalated and reported. So that's one key recommendation we've made around that project. And then on page 312 of the agenda, which is 34 of our report, we've got our second key recommendation around that project. And that's around kind of Fly Doncaster Limited, the special purpose vehicle. And it's really kind of around the governance and potential conflicts of interest that could pose. So, you know, often what you need when you have kind of a kind of company linked to the council's got a subsidiary of some sort, is you need that kind of separation of governance between the two, and that separation of kind of key officers. Because, you know, even if you try and kind of stay objective, obviously, at what point, if you're an officer of the council, does the council interests, you know, prevail? Or if you're also sitting on the board of the company, does the company interest prevail? So it's really having those clear lines of kind of, you know, who is going to report to who if something does start to go wrong. So it's just really making that recommendation around kind of making sure that conflict of interest isn't real or even perceived as well in terms of kind of your reputational risk. So, you know, the company has been dormant so far, but the reason we raised this because initially there wasn't really kind of any appetite, we didn't feel, from the council to change the arrangements that they've currently got in terms of that. And we did feel, you know, there is a potential conflict of interest going forward. You can see from the kind of later on the management kind of responses, the council has now agreed to get some independent advice around that. So that is helpful, you know, and to act on any kind of recommendations from that advice. So we've just set out kind of the things that the council needs to consider there in that key recommendation. And as I say, a bit further on in the report, from page 314 of the agenda, page 36 report, you'll see those key recommendations, each of those set out, and the management's response to that and what actions they are intending to take around that. And obviously we will follow that up as part of our 25-26 work. So I guess they're the key things I wanted to pull out of the report, but obviously I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Just one that's really overarching, and not to get into the nitty-gritty of the management actions, but in terms of, as an independent external auditor looking at the management actions, if you were to see those in place now, how would you evaluate them if they had been part of the original audit, and would they still base, or would they still contribute to the basis of your key recommendations if they were in place when you did the audit?
Thank you. So in terms of the management actions, we're satisfied with what management is proposing to do in response to the recommendations. So I guess it's a bit difficult because we need to really see how those were actioned and how they are embedded and implemented as well, because sometimes kind of, for example, if they got the advice on the kind of the conflict of interest, and we would have to see those recommendations and whether the council kind of did accept them all and did really kind of implement them fully, and how that kind of then impacted on what we perceived as potential, you know, ability for there to be conflicts of interest. So I can't say for certain that all of those would kind of then make those recommendations go away, but we are satisfied with what management are proposing, and it'll be something then, you know, that we will pick up. If we hadn't been kind of satisfied with what they'd come back in terms of the actions they proposed, then I could have kind of considered a statutory power, so putting a statutory recommendation in place, and I don't think we're at that point, which means that kind of I'm satisfied at the moment with what they're proposing to do. But of course, you know, we'll see kind of how that pans out. We'll look at it next year and we'll report back to you. And again, you know, as always, we always reserve the right to use our statutory powers if we ever thought that was necessary.
Any further questions? I think, Debbie, this is the one that I wrote down, isn't it, about the conflicts of interests with Fly Doncaster and governance. So can you just run us through what it is that you've changed since the report was done?
I think as George has just set out, there's an assessment being undertaken at a point in time, and we've made a response in relation to our perspective in relation to that, their assessment, and that's how we're going to carry. That's how we're going to progress matters.
So what's fundamentally changed from when the report was written to the actions that are going to happen moving forward?
This is a sort of a live document in as much as the paint dried on this last Monday. So it's not a historical thing, and then there's been a time elapse. External audit have Grant Thornton have assessed the position as a point in time. They've reported on the management have provided a response, and that's what will progress.
Yeah, sorry, just to kind of try and kind of clarify and kind of in terms of what Debbie's saying as well. So this looks at arrangements in place, as I said, up to year end of 31st March 2025. But as Debbie said, the work has gone on over recent months sort of thing. So the report was actually, as Debbie said, only finalised last week, and that's when the management responses to our findings were given. So I guess those responses, I'd expect them to be implemented from now on forwards over the rest of the year for us to pick up post-March next year and have another look and report back to you. So I think just to try and be fair to management, you know, that work has taken a number of months and they have recently got the report. So those responses really we'd expect to be starting from now onwards.
Thank you. So, does any member wish to speak? You've already spoken. Is there a proposal to note the report? Is that seconded? Thank you. The report is noted. Before we can move on to the last item on the agenda, please can I ask that the public and press leave the room, as as this agenda item is exempt under paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. So that now concludes the items of business on today's agenda. Thanks to everyone for their attendance, and I now declare this meeting closed.